benefits of the state park, the Friends of Connetquot, and others who are interested in history get involved, participate, and keep the place going. So as the promo for this event stated, I'm not a 15th generation. I lied. It's actually 13th generation. And here's the the list of Snedecors, and I'm the final line there at 13. I'm currently a volunteer. I'm Friends of Connetquot and serving on the board. And my first ancestor, Jan Snedeker, came over with the Dutch West India Company, 1639. Settled in Lower Manhattan, and he had a residence in the tavern right outside the fort.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Speak a little louder.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can bring this a little forward. How's that? Like that? Perfect. Okay.
You're part of this group? Yeah, you could make that full screen. It'd be easier for people to see.
So in 1639, he operated a tavern, settled in Lower Manhattan. Then around the 1650s, he moved across the East River and settled in Linwood, Brooklyn, was a patentee, and he was appointed a magistrate for Peter Stuyvesant, the governor of New York at the time. And from there, successive generations branched out across Long Island as farmers, liverymen, tavern keepers, and fishermen and what have you. This is a portrait of my ancestor, my great-great-grandfather Lefland Snedeker, who established the Snedeker Inn at the Connetquot River State Park, as it's called today. He established it in 1830, and it was operated up until 1866 when it was acquired by the Southside Sportsman's Club. He had numerous guests like Charles Tiffany, Daniel Webster, the senator from New York and noted statesman. President Martin Van Buren was there on Snedeker's time. But he wasn't the only Snedeker to have an inn on the South Shore. His cousin Charles E. Snedeker had one in Babel Village. And here, what's this? Oops. Sorry about that. Here's an invitation to a New Year's Eve ball in 1852, hosted by Charles E. Snedeker. Like I said, he was cousins. And this is what the inn looked like. This was on the, was it the northwest corner of Deer Park Avenue and Montauk Highway in the village of Babylon. And it's the Charles E. Snedeker Inn. Joseph Bonaparte, ex-king of Spain, and Napoleon's brother, was a week-long visitor at the American House in 1816 during a tour of Long Island. And Daniel Webster spent the night in 1840 when he was a senator from Massachusetts on his way to Patchogue for the Whig Party event. It was built in 1780 by Jesse Smith, was a popular stagecoach stop for routes from Point West and from the Deer Park Railroad Station. It stood for over 100 years before it's lost to fire on June 4th, 1883. And this is the Snedecor Inn, circa 1870. And my family were tenant farmers on the Nickel land grant. They leased 2 farms, roughly 300 acres, and they did so up until 1865, and then it was acquired by the Southside Sportsman's Club and became chartered in 1866. And they, increased the acreage from the original 300 to about 3,473. And they also leased the land, which is now the Two Point Country Club and Heckscher State Park for their recreational activities as well. So this is a picture roughly around the same time. I'm not sure of the exact date, but this is the picture without the porch on the second story. So here it is with the porch here on the second floor, and then this one is without. Okay. And here's an aerial shot I'm thinking sometime in the 1960s of the club. As you can see on the upper side there, you know, suburban sprawl started to take over. And now we're all packaged in with track housing, you know, strip malls and gas stations. But this is how it looked idyllic in the 1960s. When we think you can't get any worse, it does. Okay, so this is the Southside Sportsman's Club. In 1866, the Southside Sportsman's Club of Long Island was chartered the first article of the, excuse me, apologize. 1866, the Southside Sportsman's Club was chartered. The first article of the Constitution of the Association stated, this club is established for the protection of game birds, fish, and for promotion of social intercourse among its members. In the early days, it wasn't so much a fishing club as it was a trotting and coaching club. And then over the years, it became a hunting and fishing club. It attracted the you know, New York aristocracy from the city, you know, titans of industry, you know, coal, steel, banking, you name it. And you know, they all came to the Connetquot to relax and to enjoy the, you know, the pristine environment and the good food served up by the Snedecor wives. And the Southside Sportsman's Club was where the idea for Ducks Unlimited originated. The U.S. population was booming and the habitat for the ducks was being consumed, so they formed a group, you know, to raise money and to organize and lobby to protect the environment for the waterfowl, the game, and what have you. And like I said, a lot of them built their country estates. Once William K. Vanderbilt came out, everybody else followed suit, and they built their grand estates from Babylon to Bayport and further east. And this is an example of trotting by Shepard Knapp. He was a founding member of the Southside Sportsman's Club, and here he is on his team, Charlie Hogan and Sam Hill. And here's a photo of Alfred Vanderbilt. He used to go racing a lot too, and annually they had a race that began at the Southside Sportsman's Club, continued along Montauk Highway into Bay Shore, and then at the the Bay Shore Horse Show or Oakwood Park, and he would compete in events there. And this is before 1932, and when Sunrise Highway came through and bisected the property. I think it was like the 1890s, early 1900s. And this is what a share of stock looked like in the Southside Sportsman's Club. This one happened to belong to Daniel P. Allen. He was the son-in-law of Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt, and he was also involved in, you know, trotting and racing and what have you. A lot of the members, because of they were captains of industry or what have you, appeared in a lot of periodicals. Time Magazine, Sports Illustrated, and this one here is Walter Teague. He was the president and CEO of Standard Oil. Ernest Burton was the philanthropist. He was involved in the establishment of the Vanderbilt Historical Society to preserve the Southside Sportsman's Club and local history around Long Island. He worked closely with Betty Cuss back in the day. And C.R. Smith, he was the CEO of American Airlines, and pretty much shaped the American airline industry as it is today in our country. Olin, he was an ammunitions manufacturer. I think he had like over 24 patents to his name. Very, very wealthy. He lived out in East Hampton, and he had the distinction of winning the 100th running of the roses for the Kentucky Derby. His horse Colony won that year, 1975. But these were all movers and shakers that were members. Here's some of the people that graced the Connetquot River. Like I said earlier, Martin Van Buren during Snedecor's time. You had Oscar Wilder. You had Admiral William Bull Hulsey. You had Theodore Roosevelt. You had Grover Cleveland. You had Chancellor Willy Brandt of Germany. And Daniel Webster again during Snedecor's time. Herbert Hoover showed up to do some fishing. Who else? Chester Arthur was a visitor, Ulysses S. Grant, and the Duke of Windsor. I mean, is it the Duke of the Prince of Wales? I'm sorry. This is the guy that abdicated the throne for Wallace Simpson. They were all visitors to the Connetquot, either during Snedecor's or when it was the Southside Sportsman's Club or the Connetquot River Club. Here's an article I came across on the web. It appeared in the Morning Journal and Courier on February 7, 1883. President Chester Arthur was at the club visiting, and they had a caged bear that they received from a B-rated actor from New York City who had gone up to Quebec, Canada on a fishing expedition. And they managed to kidnap a cub from a mother bear and stole it. So obviously the bear's going to wail and cry and moan for its mama. So he didn't want to put up with that anymore. Got a lot of complaints about it. So he gave a bear to the Southside Sportsman's Club, who caged it up at the club. And President Arthur got too close to it and almost had his arm, amputated, taken off. Yeah. So the bear eventually did get loose and ran out to one of the little islands in the river and managed to get gunned down to death. So he didn't get into any of the neighborhoods and kill anybody. So between 1866 and 1973, the main structure on the site was used as a clubhouse. Members and their guests used the residence when visiting for fishing, hunting, and other types of outdoor recreation. The building was originally heated by fireplaces, pot-belly stoves, which could be found in nearly every room, and halls and rooms were lit with oil lamps and later replaced with gas lamps. The main club contained elaborate lockers, billiard room, men's and ladies' dining room, kitchen, fish and game packaging rooms, and bedrooms. The club and other facilities were added to the National Register of Historic Places as the Southside Sportsman's Club in 1973. Shortly after the New York State Parks obtained the property, it was legislatively declared the first park preserve in New York State. Ghosts and tours of the building are available on the first and third Sundays during season for a nominal fee. So in 1820, the Nickel family leased a portion of the land along the Middle Pond to Eliphalet Snedecor, who ran Snedecor's Tavern. The tavern became a stagecoach stop for travelers headed east. By 1830s, the tavern had become a well-known and popular place for wealthy sportsmen, as I said previously. At the east end, between two tall chimneys, was known as Snedecor's Inn there on the far left, right, rather, I'm sorry. The Southside Sportsman's Club purchased the tavern in 1866, and a series of changes were made to the building. The billiard room was originally attached to Snedecor's Tavern in 1866. The building was cut in half, and the tall central portion of the building clubhouse was added, and the billiard room was moved to its current location. So yeah, this big tall structure was added by this gentleman here, Bradford Lee Gilbert. He was basically the builder for the railroad men, and a lot of these railroad executives and titans of the railroad industry were members of the Southside Sportsman's Club. So who else would they tap other than their friend, to build the structure, the additions and the modifications. He also constructed the Oyster Bay Station, the Southampton Station, and the Bayport Station. And he's known to build the first New York City skyscraper designed. That's his claim to fame. Here's a couple of the wealthy gentlemen pulling up to the club and everybody coming out to see the car and enjoy the pleasant afternoon. In front of the main entrance of the clubhouse. And here's another shot, 1883, of a member sitting on the porch. Yeah, obviously they're out there shooting on the grounds. Wildermuir. I believe he lived in East Islip. He's with his guide there, Mr. Carl. And I guess they just got back from dog hunting and they're standing by their trophies with the gun. This is what the interior of the main entrance to the club looks like today. You got a couple of deer heads over the main entrance. This sailfish was caught by William Kingsley Macy out on one of his expeditions, I think off of Montauk. So, you know, he had that displayed there at the club, and that's where it's been ever since. Then there's photographs of various members over the years. You know, the friends and other people, you know, acquired photographs of prior members and, you know, had them put on display. This is the ladies' dining room. None of the furniture is original, but some of the silverware, the glassware, you know, knives and forks, a gravy boat, and other items are original. Everything else is, you know, fillers to make it look somewhat what it looked like when you know, members and their wives were residents. This was exclusively used for women. They had a separate dining room for their own use. They couldn't enter the men's dining room at all to socialize because that was the society norms back then. And on the right side is the men's dining room. And this is what it looked like when it was the club. And you had a Tiffany fishing trophy sitting on the table there in the center. You know? And so the place was loaded with curry and hives, prints, and other lithographs from famous artists back in the day. And when the club disbanded and things were auctioned off, a lot of it went to museums throughout the United States. A lot of it went to New York Historical Society because Robert Golette, the owner of Gardner's Island, you know, was a member, and he was also president of the New York Historical Society. So he acquired a lot of stuff that was put in storage. Some of it the friends had brought back, like an Astor stove and some other artifacts. And so here's another shot. So this Tiffany trophy sits in the New York Historical Society, you know, in New York City there, and it occasionally goes on travel, you know, throughout the country and overseas, I think. Like to show off the work of the Tiffany Company. Like I said, Charles Tiffany was a founding member also of the Southside Sportsman's Club. I think he used to keep a place in Bay Shore and used to ride his bicycle along Montauk Highway from some of the articles I read. So here's another shot of what it looked like, the ladies' dining room, when it was the Southside Sportsman's Club. Had that little blind there where the waitresses would wait to hear the little bell ring for when these ladies wanted to, you know, a cup of coffee, you know, or a drink, or, you know, more dessert. This is what the environmental office is today. If you ever walk in there, you'll see that you know, it's nothing like it was, but they're trying to have the environmental office move out and this restored as a ladies' sitting parlor. And this is what it looked like back in the day. So the ladies would come here and chit-chat, write notes, letters, and discuss the day's happenings or what they're going to, you know, do for the weekend. This is another one of their sitting rooms. This is used by the environmental office today. You know, they have stuffed birds in there, and you know, activities for children. They keep snakes and other creatures on display. Okay, this is the kitchen as it looks today. So if you went over to the Connetquot next to go on a tour, this is one of the rooms that they'll bring you to. This is the recipe for Southside clams. One of the Snedecor women, you know, developed the recipe. Apparently, it was so popular they kept it for when, you know, it was a club until it's dissolved. When it was the Connetquot River Club in the 1860s. And here's what it looked like back in the day when the club was in existence. I guess it was the focal point. off to the right, they had one of those box refrigerators, ice boxes, used to keep the ice cream and all the fresh vegetables and stuff from the local farmers and dairymen, and the milk and what have you. So every morning, they'd be making breakfast, bacon, eggs, rolls, and what have you. Back in the far left there by that window is a bread room, and it's to make their rolls, their pastries, and what have you. This is what the men's locker room looks like today. Now it's the Connetquot River State Park Preserve. A few of the lockers, that members had was recreated with some of their books and some of their fishing and hunting gear, and they just have it blocked off with like a plexiglass. There are about 2 or 3 that have guns and stuff. And this was the rod that they had across the middle of the locker room, and the men stored their fishing rods. So this is how the bedrooms look today. A lot of this was donated materials. Only a few things are original. One being this little basin on the right for shaving and cleaning yourself up. That on the right with the tall post was donated by Chris Bakken or his brother Francis Bakken. It's an old sea captain's bed from Sable. They had no use for it, so they wanted to get rid of it. So they approached, Richard Renner, and asked him if he could use it. He said, sure, why not? So it's out of character, it doesn't belong there, but it fills in the space, and I guess it makes a nice presentation, so they decided to use it. The one on the right is all furniture donated by Judith Hollins. Hollins was William K. Vanderbilt's stockbroker, and 4 generations of Hollins were members of the Southside Sportsman's Club. So Judith and her husband took some old furniture, refurbished it, and created this room here that you see on the left. And she was a member of the Board of Friends of Connetquot, and she served along with Jerry and Rita Trapani, who are here, at longtime founding members of the Southside Sportsman's Club. I don't think anybody has done more financially and physically to support that park. I haven't seen it other than these 2 here, so kudos to them and thank you. And here's what the rooms looked like back in the day. As you can see, the potbelly stove, they had a coal storage in the basement, and they get their coal deliveries and bring it up and furnish each room with the coal. I think they had some kind of tarp on the bottom, so the floors didn't catch on fire. Well, if you have a few of these coat stands still laying around, so. So here's more like what the beds look like, Rhode Island railing, not that elaborate sea captain's bed that you saw in the picture previously I was discussing. Like I said, they had prints on the walls from Currier and Ives and other photographs from the 1800s, 1900s, and some even from the 1700s. Okay, this is the billiard room. The gentleman would come from New York City after a stagecoach ride or a train ride when the railroad came out in 1868, or a car ride, and they would settle into the billiard room around the Astor stove with their rockers, reading the paper, having a drink and having a cigarette, discussing the day's events and what have you. Then they would retire for the night and then wake up on a Saturday morning and go out and have their breakfast and do what they want to do for the day, fishing or hunting or doing what they wanted to do. And let's see, this stove came from the Astor House. The proprietors of the Astor House, the hotel in New York City, were also members of the Southside Sportsman's Club. So they were doing a renovation at the hotel, so they said, well, why not give this to the Southside Sportsman's Club? And they did, and that's where it stayed until the club folded in 1972. And was auctioned off. Robert Goulet acquired it, and of course it went to the New York Historical Society because he was president, and it sat there until the Friends decided that they wanted it back in place where it had sit for so long. And these lockers came from Harry Felter. He was an early member of the Southside Sportsman's Club. He was also a coachman, racing, horse racing enthusiast, and what have you. These lockers came from his billiard establishment in New York City on Broadway. So, I mean, they're quite old. And each had a lock on it, so the men would lock up their liquor, but for some reason never bothered to lock up their fishing rods and other valuable equipment. They locked up the booze. And here's a couple of members with their dogs around the bar having a drink. So this was the main focal point. Women were not allowed in this room at all except once a year on New Year's Day. They would be allowed to sit in the rockers, sit in the chairs, converse with each other, converse with the men and what have you. But other than that, they were not allowed in there. And not too long ago, the Friends of Connetquot was contacted by somebody in California. They had a painting, and on the back it was signed by Myrtle, New York. And it was a painting, detailed painting of this room in the 1960s. And they offered it for sale, but Friends of Connetquot decided it wasn't in their interest. I think they were asking like $400 for it. But interesting, a woman was never allowed in this room, yet here's the most detailed painting of it you'll ever see anywhere. She was the wife of Miles York. And again, another, I think real estate or insurance executive. Yeah, insurance executive, I'm sorry. And here's another view of the room again. You have all these liquor lockers here with, with a display case of, critters that were shot and killed and stuffed, rattlesnakes and, other, birds and, other small game. The billiard room also features this wind clock. You can see the weather vane there on the left, and it tells you the wind direction, just by sitting in the billiard room downstairs. So that's a unique feature. I'm surprised that hasn't fallen down, to be honest with you. It looks like it's pretty well rusted up, and I don't know. Maybe one windstorm will come down, but it's another thing to address. Okay, so the main clubhouse became, too crowded, so they decided to build an annex. So on the west side, they built this, and I think it was 1878. Yeah, 23 members were given permission to build the annex. Yeah. And the firm of Meeker and Hedden of New Jersey were awarded the contract. And some of the finest buildings in New Jersey, New York City, and other eastern sections were built by this company. Well, of course, you have the money, you have the influence, you can get anything you want. Yeah, it has a beautiful staircase, which they just exposed because in the 1970s they closed off the second floor because it was wide open, so the heat would go right up and out, so they closed that off. Well, Sue Wheeler, who took over for Bill Bergen as park manager, removed that, and there you can see like the nice detailed displays, and there's beautiful fireplaces with intricate detail, and really nice. But this is an administrative office building, and not open to the public except for use of the bathrooms that are located in that building. Okay, so 8 members got together because the noise and the sounds of the clubhouse were just too annoying for them. So they wanted their own space. So this is the East Annex that was designed by local architect Isaac Green. And I think the plumbing was done by Jellica Brothers. Yeah, and Ashby and Breckenridge from Sable, also involved in the construction. I think it was about $10,000 to construct, which is equivalent to $1 million today, they say. But this building was inhabited by Gil Bergen, who was the park manager. Now, when he passed away in this building, everybody got a good look inside to see what it really looked like, because Gil didn't allow anybody to go in there. This building is in such a deteriorated state. I mean, you talk about mold, mildew, asbestos. I mean, it's rancid. I mean, it's such a gorgeous building with, you know, moldings, you know, the staircase, the woodworking, everything. But it just went into disrepair for decades of neglect. So sad, but the new Friends of Connetquot president, John Soley, is trying to raise money, I think like $20,000 for an engineering study to see what they could do to bring this building, you know, up to some kind of use, whether it be another park manager in there or, you know, or used by the state park for offices or whatever. But it's a shame when you walk throughout it. I mean, it's gorgeous, but you know, it's not livable. It's like Section 8 housing. Okay. Yeah, so like I said earlier, traveling along the South Shore, wealthy Americans included Vanderbilts, Cuttings, Bournes, and others came from their New York City's home to their country estates. Times have changed, considering that many of those famous businesses can spend 2 days trying to get out to you know, to the Oakdale area on a horse-drawn carriages. And here we have a picture of Jerry Rudy Trapani. I believe this is on the park grounds, right, Judith?
What's that?
I believe this is on the park grounds, right?
No, actually, that photograph is at Shelburne Farm.
Oh, okay.
Shelburne,
Yeah.
but we did drive the four of them in the
Yeah,
park.
Yeah. Okay,
it
okay.
could have been, but it wasn't.
Okay, okay. Very nice picture. I love this. I hope you don't mind me using it. All right, then below is the clubhouse station. Of course, the Southside Sportsman's Club owning the railroads, they can put the club station anywhere they want. So they put it right there. And a donkey with a cart would come pick up the member and take them back to the clubhouse, you know, from and to. I guess it was the 46-mile marker there to the right. So Harbors and Weeklies, April 4th, 1885 edition, published a story about the Southside Sportsman's Club. You can see sketches of the grist mill, of the lower pond, of the hatchery, the boat landing, and what have you. So it's a nice article. Occasionally, you can purchase this online if you are persistent enough. You can get a copy of this, the Harper's Weekly. I managed to get 2, 3 over my lifetime, and of course I've given them away. So, and there are prints just of this that you could buy, I think, online. Some people sell them for like $25, others for $50. So if you're interested in that, you're best off to shop around. Okay, so trout, how it all began. All right. Brown trout were first introduced into streams in U.S. waters in 1865 by James Norman Johnston, a member of the Southside Sportsman's Club, and James Raspop, a noted fish culturist from England. They partnered in an attempt to raise brown trout, salmon, and European char at a commercial hatchery that they had built on 10th Street in Greenwich Village, with the idea of supplying New York City restaurants with fresh salmon and trout. The hatchery on 10th Street did not meet expectation, so the following year they moved the hatchery operation to Connetquot River. So it was actually these two gentlemen, Ramsbottom and Johnstone, that acquired a property from the Nickel grant. And these two gentlemen in turn sold it to the Southside Sportsman's Club, which got incorporated in 1866. Brown trout are native to streams of northeastern United States and is the official fish of New York State. Trout are a good indicator of a pristine river system because they require very clean fresh water to live in. Rainbow trout are native to the West Coast and were first transported over the Rocky Mountains to the Connetquot River in 1884 and are still raised at the Connetquot hatchery. So I don't know if you have gone up to the hatchery at Connetquot. It's a worthwhile visit. You can feed the trout and get a look at the operations going on up there. Here's the hatchery itself, so you can walk along here. They have little machines there, you put the quarter in, you grab the pebbles, you can throw it into the river, and you see the trout come up to look at it. And here's our park environmentalist panoramic in front of the area where they raise the fingerlings, the little trout, until they're old enough to go out to the big world. So every day they go out and they pick the bad eggs out from this little area. Now this looks like a river stream, right? But this is actually a man-made. It says north of the hatchery there appears to be a stream, but it is not. The canal was dug almost 130 years ago by hand. During the summer, the water in the pond and marsh flows slowly, and the hot sun warms the water. Trout like cold water, so the members of the Southside Sportsman Club dug the canal to bypass the warm areas and bring the clear, cool water directly to the trout in the hatchery. The river temperature, even in the middle of the summer, is never more than 65 degrees. Okay, here's another shot of the hatchery, and here's in the middle there with the handlebar mustache is James Riley. He was a long-time hatchery attendant there from the Southside Sportsman's Club. And again, another photo of the hatchery, and undated. And I guess yes, they're scooping eggs, I guess, from the fish. I guess this would be, what, 1960s, 1970s time frame? I don't know, to be honest. And we have some artisan wells at the park. There's something really fascinating about water bubbling up from the ground. The area called Artisan Wells is the site of natural underground springs. Almost 100 years ago, the wells were sunk here and increased the flow of water. Water from natural springs and wells can be very pure and clean so that the trout grow up to be healthy. Beginning in the 1920s, the wells, hatchery, and the raceways were built as a containment area for young trout to grow before they're released into the main pond. And here's one of the buildings servicing those artisan wells. So here's some overview of the features of the park. You have a blue trail and a red trail, and different amenities at the park that can be utilized. One thing I would suggest, always stay on the paths, because the tick population on Long Island, as you know, it's not the ticks and mosquitoes, so you really got to fortify yourself, because they're pretty bad. So best not to go venturing out there during the summer months. So the Connetquot River State Park has a unique past. Its recorded history starts with the Snedecor Native Americans. They gave the river its name, Connetquot, which means Great River. William Nickel Long, one of the first Europeans settled in the area, was granted lands on both sides of the river through patents in 1864 and 1684 and 1697. Nickel built a dam trap in the upper portion of the river, which provided source of power to run a grist mill and created a pond that became well known for its trout fishing. The mill was first constructed in the early 1700s and has been recently rebuilt by Friends of Connetquot. Well, basically, it put a replica of what was once there, because nothing was salvageable, pretty much. Maybe just a few stone items. This is one of a few horizontal tub water mills that remain in the United States. Most mills use a vertical mill that turns like a tire as the water catches it. Nickel's mill represents a much earlier design from Scandinavia, where the water pushes the millstone around like a top. The wheel is fastened to a vertical axle that turns the millstone. So if you're interested in grist mills, I suggest you go over for a tour. And one of the docents there will take you in and explain how everything works. And here's it's a popular bridge crossing at the park. Just a mile high north of the hatchery is Bunch's Bridge. The river above and below the Mudson's Bridge is known as worldwide for great trout fishing. The original bridge spanned the river about 20 yards south of the current one and was used by stagecoaches to bring members to the club from the Long Island Railroad main line and to Central Islip. And President Theodore Roosevelt used to cross this bridge to go to Bayport Sable to visit the family there in that area from Oyster Bay. They had to maintain their separation because the uncle had a girlfriend of interest, and that was frowned upon back in those days. And being that the family was political, you know, they kept in touch and they were friendly, but outward appearances they had to, you know, keep themselves separate. So you had the Oyster Bay Roosevelts, then you had the Bayport Sable Roosevelts. Here he is. This man began his career at the Southside Sportsman's Club in 1945. His mom and dad were employees of a cutting family. His father was the chief herdsman. I think his brother was the limousine driver for Mrs. Cutting. And I guess was a help-out hand. He did what he can, you know, as he was told. He would venture over to the Southside Sportsman's Club and, you know, hang out, and eventually got himself employed. His mother is from Levittown, and she knew Colonel Stimson, who was the Secretary of War under Franklin Roosevelt. So between that connection, you know, nepotism, he got the job, and then eventually he became the superintendent of the Southside Sportsman's Club and the Connetquot River Club. Interesting story about Gil and Colonel Stimson. Colonel Stimson, like I said, was the Secretary of War, and his undersecretary was John McCloy. Both of them were avid fishermen and always at the Connetquot. One afternoon, Gil happened to be the guide for them, went out on the boat with them, and these two were talking about dropping the bomb on Japan. Yeah. So discussions of pretty high level and importance were often held at the Connetquot. A lot of members were Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Treasury. So these people were movers and shakers. One guy had the name of Robert Tyson. He was the chief financial officer of U.S. Steel. So he was constantly giving testimony to Congress. So he was a mover and shaker. You know, the markets in Wall Street, you know, would wait for every word that came from his mouth when he was giving testimony to see which way things were going to go, you know, in terms of the economy. So you would ask, how does a beautiful place like that with wealthy, influential individuals lose the place? Why did they give it up? Well, Robert Moses wanted to become a member of the Southside Sportsman's Club. He got an introduction to the club, you know, through Thorne, you know, who was up here in North Bay Shore at Thornhill Estate, and he was friends with Moses. Moses made him Long Island State Park Commissioner. So he got his introduction to the club through them. He liked it so much he wanted to become a member. So one afternoon I was with my father and my uncle and Gail and myself, and they were chatting, and this topic came up. And well, what happened to the Southside Sportsman's Club? He says, well, yeah, Robert Moses showed up. He wanted to become a member, knocked on the door. He told the admission committee or executive committee they wanted to become a member. And they looked at each other, and they really had no liking for Robert Moses. You know, they had a lot of competing business interests with him, and other issues too. They put the Northern State Parkway and the LIE right through their country estates on the North Shore. So that was another reason, right? So he walked away dejected, but he didn't go up. He came back a second time, knocked on the door. He said, okay, guys, how would you like your taxes doubled or tripled? So they, at that time, you know, during the Southside Sportsman's Club history, it was one of the wealthiest clubs, if not the wealthiest club in the United States, in terms of individual member wealth, because they were worth a lot of money. So they looked at him and they said, well, we can absorb any tax increase you want to impose upon us. Right? So he went, oh, right. Walked away dejected, right? And knocked on the door a third time. Right? How about it, guys? They looked at him and they said no. Then he says, well, I'm going to acquire the property by eminent domain. And at that time, Hampshire State Parkway wasn't under construction, It only went as far as, I believe, Deer Park or, or West Islip area. So he says he's gonna take the Hampshire State Parkway, bring it all the way around, and put it right through the clubhouse. He was gonna acquire the property by eminent domain. Right? So they looked at each other, and they said, well, we can't fight eminent domain. So back and forth, they came up with an agreement that they would sell it to the state of New York for a little over $6 million, and in turn, some of the members can form a club called the Connetquot River Club, lease it back from the state for 10 years, and then, continue on that way. Well, 10 years ended, and they wanted to renew the lease. And the state said, no, you have to get out. Right? So that left a sour taste in their mouth. So when they left, they stripped the place of everything they could possibly take, not leaving anything for the state of New York. Stripped everything, gone, right? So they took their money and they ran, and then I guess one day a week during some seasons, they were allowed to have the park to themselves for one day, probably on the Monday that the park is closed. These gentlemen can come in and fish like they used to do. But yeah, that's the reason why it was disbanded, because Ralph Moses, wanted to muscle his way in, and these gentlemen wanted no part of it. So.
Anyway.
So that's it. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation. I apologize for my resistance. So any questions? Go ahead.
You said a little bit about how trout fishing had to be like the purest water.
Mhm.
So does that mean that present day Connetquot River in Long Island is that pure?
Yeah.
Oh, it's clear.
Yeah.
How does it stay that way? I mean, with all the neighborhoods and industry.
Yeah, with the increase in suburbanization, gas stations and everything.
Yeah.
Close call on Red Highway there when they had that overturned oil
Oh, yeah.
tank about 3 years ago. They put phones up and everything. Yeah, Bill always told me that, oh, from the headwaters, you can go right down there and drink. I said, yeah, no thanks. Because with today, it's so expensive to dispose of chemicals, dry cleaning chemicals and stuff. So people just go into, deserted areas with no lights and you hear it all the time, and dump their stuff because it's just cheaper. They don't care about your kids stepping in water and getting cancer and whatnot. No, it's the water's pure.
Is it all enclosed in the fence?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's all surrounded. Yeah, there's nobody with like Oakdale. It's all built on salt marsh, so they're in their own waste every time they flush the toilet. I mean, that river south of the park. Yeah, that's contaminated. But up north, no.
Huh?
Yeah.
This is what?
We know the story of the Snedecors. You and I met at the cemetery in Oakdale.
Yeah, you're the gentleman that did that fantastic, invitation with the uniform and everything. Yeah, it was superb. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. But the one thing that I'd like a little more clarification on is Sarah Seaman, his wife.
She is a descendant of Dunfoy priest who arrived on the Mayflower. So that was her lineage.
So he married up.
Yeah. She was the good cook there. She met with Delmonico, and that's what attracted
I
those
love that
gentlemen from New York
Delmonico
City.
story.
It's the belly and the surroundings. What did I say? Location.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah.
What happened to the hatchery?
It's there.
Politics.
Really?
Politics. It's still operating. They pump in water, but politics with the IPM. Yeah. Any place else in the country, they don't shut it down. It's not a threat to humans. But Environmental Protection Agency in New York State, now shut it down until you get rid of that. And it's actually impossible because with the birds and everything else flying around, defecating into the water and what have you, that's always there. But yeah.
You mentioned one of the political connections there as being a Tyson. My wife went to school with Pat Tyson and says that you're related?
Yes. I haven't spoken to her in years. If she is alive, she must be about 105, I think. Yeah.
73. She's retired in Hollywood from Disney.
It'd be a daughter.
Has to be the daughter, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Marge Tyson is a relative of mine. Yeah, she's a Snedecor. She was a descendant of Isaac Green there in Sable. She lived on Middle Road there,
Mhm.
in that stucco house there on the corner of Snedecor Avenue and Middle Road. Yeah, that was Marge Tyson, yeah, yeah, yeah. And her husband, they were very nice. Yeah, I haven't spoken to any of my family members. We just lose contact, you know. You have your own lives and you do your own thing, you know. You get a Christmas card every year, then 1 year you don't, you're like, okay, they're still alive.
They may all show up at the alumni luncheon every August.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Many years ago, on the south side of the highway, on the stream leading in there
Uh-huh.
was a little hatchway, square, where they stocked it with bass.
Oh, okay.
And once or twice a month, we used to fish in that little hatchway.
Yeah, that the kill come and chase you away, or?
Well, Sunrise
Yeah,
Highway.
yeah, who's gonna bother you? Yeah. Yeah, I had a lot of those stories
I
there.
believe that hatchway is still there.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I don't get out of my car on Sunrise Highway anytime, anywhere
Well, you
now.
go down the little side road there, directly across the street.
Okay.
That little,
Yeah, that little area there.
that wooded area in there.
Okay.
That-
Okay, wow. Yeah, I haven't, last time I was there, I think it was like maybe the 1970s on my bicycle, you know, but, yeah, just to go slow on Sunrise Highway or to park anywhere near it, it's like too dangerous. I mean, people go like 90 miles an hour through that
No,
uphill
this
road.
this is totally out of traffic.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so we'll see what the state of New York does, you know, if they want to, expand the highway. I don't know if it's going to be taking away the bicycle lane that they put in there, but because that was heavily funded, so again, politics again. So hopefully we'll be able to do something. Huh?
This is still open to the public.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's a state park, yes. Years ago, you used to have a permit to get in there and explain that you wanted bird watch, photography, or cross-country ski, but you don't need that. You just go in, pay the $8 fee, and you're all set to go.
I remember when it had, I missed one,
Yeah, no, you can get in about the bit. I'm sorry, Dan.
from this room.
The women in that dining room, I'm assuming they were not members, they were wives of members?
Yeah, they were wives.
Women were not.
No, the women were not allowed, not permitted. They could not bring them on the property. Yeah. Was it Mary Pickford? I guess she was a famous actress, and she was a woman ahead of her time in the 1940s. She was heavily invested in movie theaters. She was responsible for the creation of the Oscars. And we have a photograph of her at the club with President Guy Carey looking over Main Pond. So I assume they let her in and they invited her in because, they had some kind of business negotiations going on. But even, for women back then, for her to be, standing in these all-men boardrooms, making business decisions, making a lot of money, that's no small accomplishment.
You showed some horse racing things with the buggies and back, and I noticed the driver was wearing this stovetop hat. Was that standard helmet for that time of?
For that period, yeah. Like kids, like everybody today, you see them in beards. It's the fad of the day. Then that passes on. We have a lot of members in Notable New Yorkers, written by Moses King from 1898 to 1904. Every photograph is with a goatee, mustache, a handlebar mustache, or whatever. No guy is without a mustache, unless he was a reverend or a
The
priest.
picture you showed, and you said that the woman painted the same thing.
Miles, you're
I commented to the lady here, is it required to have a mustache to be with you?
Yep. These women that were the wives of the Southside sportsmen, notably you know, Alva Vanderbilt, they bankrolled and financed the women's suffrage movement. Without them, they would have never gotten the, the right to vote, because we all know money talks and the BS walks. So yeah, so these women were movers and shakers. They really were.
Why do they call it Rattlesnake Creek? Were there rattlesnakes back in the day?
They were very, very numerous. A lot of members back in the day had their dogs killed by rattlesnakes biting. Yeah. And when they were riding the horses in their carriages, along the roadway there, the horses would get startled to jump up, and that's how they knew a rattlesnake was there. Yeah. I'm not sure what year the last rattlesnake was killed in Oakdale, but I have to look that up again. I forgot. Maybe I'll include that in a future presentation.
Why did the state not renew the 10-year lease? Was it because of other things they wanted to do? So I would imagine they would have been expensive.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, two questions. One is, why did the state not renew that 10-year lease?
Politics.
It was just politics?
Yeah,
And did your father or others ever talk about if they had let Robert Moses in, if the fate of all of this would have been different? Did they ever guess about that?
Yeah. Don't forget, anti-Semitism, was alive then as it is today. And I came across letters in one of the rooms that Rita, our historian chairperson of Friends of Connetquot, she's doing a lot to preserve our local history. So I'm glad I'm doing my hands, not only for Connetquot, but she's doing a fantastic job. Well, I came across letters that basically, were explaining, why does Robert Moses have to take over our club? Why can't he go elsewhere? And the other member wrote back, well, because he's Jewish, we don't want him here as a member, because they were all Protestant, Episcopal, or whatever. So I did come across letters to that effect. So not only business interests in putting in order so the state to their properties, but also because, it's religious beliefs.
Question, you mentioned a family estate, North Bay Shore. What family was that again, you said?
I'm sorry?
You said there was a family estate, North Bay Shore, you were referring to, but you didn't say what family it was.
North Bay Shore?
Yeah, that's what you said.
No, you said Thorn's
Oh, the
estate.
Thorn estate, I know the Thorn, it's okay. That answers that question.
Thornhill.
Yeah.
It's now the Admiralty. When Mrs. Thorne passed away in 1972, that was a big, white elephant. They couldn't afford the taxes and everything else. So I think they gave a portion to the Episcopal Church, the rest they sold off, and a piece of it they gave to the Nature Conservatory. So if any of you wanted to go in, you just, you call the Nature Conservatory, they'll make, arrangements with the Admiralty Guard so that you can go in and you'll go take a look. But the mansion and the estate itself is no longer in existence. I think, what's his name, the guy who ran for president, Kerry from Massachusetts, he married one of the Thorne daughters, and they had their reception there at Thornhill there.
Now, the second question is, did any of the women actually fish or hunt or anything on those grounds?
I'm sorry.
Did any of the women fish or hunt on the grounds?
Oh, absolutely. Now it's open to anybody and everybody, and we welcome anybody and everybody. Yeah, absolutely. You have women, with fighting breast cancer that come in and fish and have a day out and enjoy themselves and feel refreshed and what have you. Oh, yeah.
But did they do it back in the 1800s? That's my question.
They allowed the women to come to the club one day, and I think it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, wives of the members, But it wasn't, full access anytime, whenever you want. It was, restricted.
I have a question. I read in that, I believe I read in that book, One Little River.
Right.
About the Snedecor Tavern.
Right.
And there are other little taverns, right? You have the Grist Mills, and there's another tavern on Cormans River. But
right.
the Snedecors had an ability to be hospitality, and really people like the Snedecor Tavern better than the one on Cormans River.
Because of the hospitality of the wives, like I said, the good cooking. You win the hearts of men and women by what you put in their tummy.
But I mean, the tavern itself had that reputation.
Yeah, absolutely. If you read the Oakdale history, you'll see newspaper clippings, it's basically saying that, the champagne bunch, the mint juleps, or whatever.
Because I say that a lot, I want to make sure that I'm saying the right thing.
That's where they say the Southside cocktail was developed, at the Southside Sportsman's Club. And that's the aristocracy social club drink around the entire country. I mean, it's most famously served at the Kentucky Derby, you know, Running of the Roses, where the women wear their elaborate English hats, you know, have their little...
What is the drink? How is it made? What's in the Sportsman that you talk about? Well, how do you make it? What is it?
What is what, I'm sorry?
The Sportsman drink that you said, you know.
Cocktail.
What kind of a cocktail?
Oh, it sounds like a mint julep.
Oh, it's a mint julep, okay.
You can look it up online, just Google Southside Sportsman's Club and cocktail. Yeah. I think I made it once, and I wasn't a fan, so I totally forgot what the recipe is. Anybody else?
And two questions. When did the Southside Sportsman Club officially open?
When, as a state park?
No, before that.
Oh, 1866. 100 members band together, and they formed the club. Yeah. Mostly from New York City. And you had the Carnegies, the Whitneys, the Vanderbilts, the Fitz family. They were all part of this deal. Like I said, anybody that had money that was involved with industry, banking, you know, were associated with the Southside Sportsman's Club.
The other question was, when did Montauk Highway or Sunrise Highway become paved for roads?
Sunrise Highway went as far as the state hospital, the mental institution in Massapequa, right where the Massapequa Mall was. That's as far as it went. Yeah. It came out 1932 to the Southside Sportsman's Club, and that's where it stopped. Then you had to jump onto Montauk Highway and continue your journey that way. Wow. And then it wasn't until the 1960s that it went out as far as Patchogue. And then after Patchogue, and then it went all the way out to Southampton. Yeah. But yeah, only as far as that until 1932.
Yeah, you mentioned that when they were widening Sunrise Highway, there are 2 street-level bridges in front of the Sportsman's Club, with one with gas mains this big. The utility was going to widen the 2 street-level bridges. The sports club sued them, lost the case. Then they brought in the environmentalists, and those bridges were never touched in front of the Sportsman's Club.
What happens is when you have too many people in too small an area with conflicting interests, nothing gets done because everyone's, you know.
The equipment to do the job was delivered on both sides of the street and it got canceled.
Anywhere else, you know, would have been done, complete, but yeah, it's just too many conflicting interests all around. Yeah, you can't get anything done because everybody has something to say and everybody has money and sway and influence. Yeah, exactly. That's where we are. If you ever get a chance to stop by the South Side of the Sportsman's Club with Connetquot River State Park Preserve today, take a tour. Nice time to do in the fall with the leaf colors, and spring is nice with the daffodils in bloom. What happened was Robert Goulet was a member of the Southside Sportsman's Club and the Connetquot River Club, and he ordered a ton of we call it daisies, is it? The yellow flower that, he ordered tons of them for Gardener's Island to be spread out all across the island. Well, apparently somehow the shipping order got messed up, and he got an abundance of them. So he was very good friends with Gil. He would send a car out to Oakdale to pick up Gil, to take him out to East Hampton, to take the ferry over to Gardener's Island. And he asked Gil if he would like these daffodils. And Gil said, yeah. So right after that, the park started getting populated with daffodils. And until this day, they're still planting daffodils wherever they can. So the deer don't like daffodils. So when you go in the spring, it's really pretty and really nice. Wow. It's refreshing after a long winter to see that.
Keith, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome, sir. Yeah.
Good.